Hi, and welcome to Art with Mrs. Torres. Today we're going to be learning about Karla Gerard. Her paintings are called contemporary folk art. That means that she is self-taught and she lives in Maine and she is still alive and working on beautiful paintings even today. I can't wait to teach you some of the different techniques that we're going to be doing to try to be inspired by her work, but we're going to be creating our own houses and our own landscape pictures today. Now, one thing that's kind of cool about Karla Gerard is that she hides an animal in each one of her paintings. So we'll have to be looking in our pictures today to see if we can find any of the animals she likes to hide. So let's get ready to do our own version of a contemporary folk house.
Today we are going to be doing a little home painting. Folk art artist Karla Gerard is our inspiration. This is my version of the painting, and I'm hoping yours is going to look completely different. Now, a couple of things I want to point out about this picture is the name of this painting is called Cardinals. Can you see a cardinal bird hidden anywhere in the painting? There are two actually hidden in the painting. Now, the first thing I told you when we were talking about her artwork is that she hides animals in her picture. Do you see something else that's standing out in the front of the house? I know, it might be her pet dog. I don't know. So this is going to be a lot of fun. We are going to be using watercolors and oil pastels today. Now, if you don't have oil pastels, you can also use crayons. So you're going to need a piece of watercolor paper since we're going to be painting. You're going to need some watercolors if you have those. You are going to need a pencil, an eraser, your Sharpie marker, and then you're going to need either oil pastels or crayons. I'm going to be using oil pastels. One more thing you're going to need, and that is some water. And I like to use a napkin for blotting my paintbrush. So go look for a couple items and then meet me back here when you are ready to do your art project. Welcome back. Let's start using our pencil first, and we're going to be making our paper horizontal, which is long. First thing we're going to be doing is finding the center of our paper, making a light little dot in the center, and then in that center spot, we're going to start to design our first house. So our first house is going to be this tall one right here. Very simple, right in the middle of our paper. So the first thing we're going to do in that dot is create a window. Once you've created your window, you're going to draw a small box around the window. Once you've created your window, the next thing we're going to do is draw an upside down V above it. This is going to be the peak of our roof. When you're finished drawing that, we're going to draw one side of the house here. We're only going to draw one side. Then we're going to draw a short line across. And we're going to connect the other side. But please don't worry if your house looks different than mine. It might be taller, it might be shorter. It doesn't matter. We're just having fun today. Next, we're going to create a rectangle for a door. And then we're going to create another house on this side. So this one, if we look over here, you can see when Karla Gerard drew her houses, are her lines perfectly straight? Not at all. She just had fun. She doesn't worry about things being perfect. The windows are crooked. The door is crooked. Nothing is done perfectly straight. And that's what I want you to do today. I don't want you to worry about anything being perfect. Now this house is going to be a little bit in front of this house. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring this line down a little bit longer. And I'm going to draw a line that goes across. And then we're going to draw a line that comes up about halfway up this house, and then we're going to cross it over. And now we're going to create a roof on this house. Now, the way that I think the easiest way to create a roof is to go and copy this line. That means drawing the same thing parallel. We're just going to draw it a little bit shorter, so it's not going to be quite as long. And then we can just connect the ends. We're not going to worry about our roof being straight or perfect, because you can see hers isn't either. So we've done two houses. Now we're going to draw a door. Now her door is kind of off to the side here with two windows. So you can copy that, or you can draw your door right in the middle. It's up to you. I think I'm going to make this window long, a little bit different than hers. Now we've got one more little house to build on this side, or it could be a part of this house. Maybe it's the back part of the house. So if you'd like to add that, you can. And I'm going to add that on mine. So I'm going to come over here, and this part of the house is behind this house. That means it has to be a little higher. So we're going to draw a line that's a little higher than this one. That comes out and then up. And then you can go straight back, or you can go on an angle the way she did hers. She did hers a little bit on an angle. Do you see that? I'm going to kind of copy that idea. When you're finished with that, you can add a window and a door if you want a door. I'm just going to add a window. And when you're all finished, now we're going to make the roof a little bit thicker. So what we're going to do is copy by tracing the same exact line right next to it. So we're going to make this roof a little bit thicker. I'm going to round it on the end. I'm going to make this roof a little thicker, so I'm just going to copy what I did before and just draw a line parallel next to it. Just means I'm going right next to what I did before, round the end. And on this roof, I don't have to because it's facing forward. These ones are kind of facing sideways. Now, another thing that you might want to add are chimneys. That's pretty simple. It's just a rectangle. So you can decide where you'd like to make your chimney. And later, we'll put some smoke coming out of the top. That means that they have a nice fireplace going inside. When you're all finished drawing your house, the next part we're going to draw is a line where you want to draw your trees. So we've got one big tree on this side, so that's going to be kind of even with the house. So I'm just going to come over here and figure out where I want that tree. And I'm just going to draw a straight line to remind me where I want that tree to be. Now you're going to decide where you want a tree on this side of the paper. Now I don't have as much room, but I could draw a part of a tree kind of hanging off the edge of the paper here. And then in the front, she's got a tree right down here in the front. So I'm going to draw a line coming up from the bottom of the paper, just like she did. Another thing that Karla Gerard did was she drew a path in the snow. So that path has to connect to the door. So I'm going to draw a path here and a path in the snow here. And my final thing is to add a horizon line. The horizon line is the line that's going to separate the snow from the sky, or the ground from the sky. So I'm going to draw a horizon line here. And I don't have too much room on this side. Let's see. It's going to come out on that side. Now I'm ready to go in and use my Sharpie marker and trace over all of my lines. So If you want to pause the video, you can do the same thing. You're just going to go in and trace each one of these lines, and then later we'll add more detail using some oil pastels. So go ahead, pause your video, and what you're going to be doing is just tracing over all of your lines just like this. I'll meet you back here when you're done. Okay, I got everything outlined. Now I'm going to go in and do a few details. I'm going to add some plus signs in my windows. I'm going to add a border around my window. So I'm just drawing a little box around each window. It kind of helps it to show up, plus it gives me another chance to add more color later. In this window, it's a little bit longer, so I think I'll make a different window pane. And then what about on our door? We could add some trim around the door, just like we did with the windows. And maybe want to add a doorknob. Then, when we're all finished drawing all of our details, the last thing we're going to add is a dog. Let me show you how to make a dog. So the first thing I notice is the dog has kind of a rectangle body. So I'm just going to go over here, draw like a little round hot dog shape, color it in. Next comes his tail. So I'm just going to make a little curly tail on the end. Then he's got a short little neck right here. It's not very long. I'm going to make a circle for his head. And a tiny pointed nose. 2 ears. 2 front legs. 1, 2. And 2 back legs. 1, 2. Now, when you are drawing your dog, it might end up looking like a cat, and that's okay too. I don't even know whether it's supposed to be a dog or a cat. I kind of think it's a dog, but who knows? Now, does mine look exactly like Karla Gerard's? Nope. And does yours look exactly like mine? I sure hope not. I hope you created your own. Now, let's go in and figure out some other fun things we can do. How about some patterns on our roof? Do you see those patterns? We could make some patterns. Now, one of the ways that we could do that is using our oil pastels, and one of the ways we can do it is with our marker. So you might want to wait and do it with your oil pastel. I think I'm going to wait and do it with my oil pastel. So from here, I know these don't look like trees, but they will once we start using our oil pastels. So go ahead, close up your marker, and let's move on to now our oil pastels. I don't want you to really worry about erasing any pencil lines. If they are bothering you and you have some really dark ones, most of them are going to get covered up anyway with your oil pastels. But if you have something that's light, like maybe where the windows would be, if you're going to make your windows white or yellow, then you might want to erase them. But the rest of them, don't even worry about it. All right, let's move on to now our oil pastels. Now, if you don't have oil pastels, you can use crayons. They'll work just the same. They're going to resist the watercolor that we're going to use later. So I'm going to be using oil pastels. The first color I'm going to be working with is, let's see, no yellow. I like to start with my lighter colors. There's no yellow in this picture, but you can use yellow if you want to make something yellow. I'm seeing some pretty red up here for the fireplaces. So let's go in with the red oil pastel. You could also use crayons. I'm going to color a little bit of red, and I'm going to leave a little bit of the paper poking through. That way when I paint over it later, my paint's going to attach to the paper. So you can see I'm not coloring perfect. I'm just kind of scrabbling. And let's see, what's another color that we want to try? I think pink is a fun color. I see some pink in the windows. You could make one of your windows pink, or you could make it a different color. So we're just going to kind of mix in some fun colors, and you'll see I'm leaving a little bit of the paper showing. I'm not coloring perfectly because I want to be able to see where my paint is going to stick to the paper. I see some blue, so I'm going to find one of my pretty blue oil pastels. And I'm going to color a little blue in this house. However, you could make your house a different color. You can see I'm barely touching my pastel down to the paper. If you're using the crayons, you're going to do the same thing. I'm still leaving a lot of the paper showing through. That way, when I get ready to use my oil pastels mixed in with that water, the water is not going to stick to the paper where the oil pastel is. I'm going to draw a fun little pattern because I see she drew a fun pattern on her roof. So I'm going to do the same. And then when I'm done with one house, I'm going to move on and do something with the other house. Now, while I have this blue in my hand, I see that she put a little blue on her roof over here. So I'm going to pop in a little blue here. And you're just going to go in and color each house a different color. It doesn't have to match what she did. You can do it totally different. So I think I'm going to make this house have a green shade to it. And we need lots of paper still showing through so that I can paint too. While I have this green in my hand, I want to try using it somewhere else. So maybe I'll put some green around the door. And then I'm just going to keep doing this until my house is completed. You're going to do the same. So go ahead and work on your houses. I'm going to pause my video. You go ahead and pause yours and then meet me back here when all of your houses have some color very lightly on the doors, the windows, and all the roofs. And then meet me back here and we'll work on the trees together. Welcome back. Let's get ready to work on our trees. Now, the first thing we're going to do for our trees is we're going to make the trunks brown. So you're just going to run the brown crayon or oil pastel over your line. I have that other tree way over here. Then we're going to go in and start to build up our green colors to try to make the different tiers of the tree. So you can see it's small and it gets a little bit thicker and larger as it comes down the tree. So let's go in with a light green if you have one, and we're just going to start with one tree at a time. So let's do this one right over here. And I'm just going to color a little bit of green on the top of the tree, just a tiny little piece. You can see that it's just a little bit up on the top. And I'm going to skip a space, and the next section is going to be a little bit longer. It's a little bit longer than the first one. The next section is going to be a little bit longer. And I'm just scrabbling up and down, leaving a little space between each one, and leaving a little room at the bottom, for the bottom of the trunk. And I'm going to repeat that same pattern, doing the same thing on any of the tree trunks that I did. So a small one at the top, a little bit larger, a little bit larger, a little bit longer each time, and a little bit thicker each time also. One more to do. It can go right in front of the house. I'm just coloring right over the house, actually. When you're finished with one shade of green, if you have a darker shade of green, you're going to go in and do the same exact thing over a light green. So you're just going to add a little bit of dark green now, right over the light green. I'm just scribbling. I'm not making it perfect. I'm just adding a little bit of pop of color. When you're all finished with that color, if you have a really light green, I have kind of this mint green in my box, you can add that over the top. If you don't have that, you could also use yellow, and you could also use white. trees are done. Now I'm going to move on to the next part, and that's going to be our snow. And so for our snow, we're going to be using a little tiny bit of gray. Do you have gray in your box, in your oil pastel box or your crayon box? Now, the first place we're going to put gray is on the pathway. You can see that there's a little bit of gray. Now, I don't want to put too much, so I'm just going to make a little scribble scrabble on one path, and a little scribble scrabble on the other path. Then I see that there's a little gray shadow underneath the little dog. There's a little gray shadow underneath the house. So each house, I'm just going to scribble a little shadow. And you'll see that there's a shadow coming down from the trees. Now you can make your shadow going this direction or this direction. You decide which way you want your shadow to go. And you're just going to scribble scrabble a line from the trees. When you're all done with your gray, please put that back in your box. And then our final oil pastel color that we're going to be using is white. Now we're going to take that white and we're going to scribble it right up here coming out of the chimney. So we want to make sure the tip is clean. So you can take your napkin and you can wipe the tip of your pastel to kind of clean it before you use it. And we're just going to scribble a little cloud or smoke coming up out of the chimney. Now it's not going to show up right now, but I promise it will show up once we paint our sky. Now another thing we're going to be using white for is to add a little white underneath our houses and next to the pathway. So we're going to be scribbling white pastel. Even though it's not going to show up now, it will when we start to paint our snow. So let me show you in my painting what I meant. So you can see I took white oil pastel here and I rubbed it next to my gray. And then when I painted light blue paint, the white showed up. So I'm going to take my white now and I'm going to run it along the path on both sides and a little bit down the walkway. So I'm just going to scribble a little bit of white in there and then run it right next to the pathway. I'm also going to put it right underneath the house. So there's a little snow right at the base of each house, right above that gray shadow. Now the last thing that we're going to want to do with this white is put a little bit underneath the dog or cat and a little bit underneath the trees. It's okay if the white gets a little dirty. We're going to clean it off one more time. And now we're going to go up into the sky and we're going to push kind of hard with our oil pastel and leave little dots. So I'm pushing down. I'm not banging or tapping. I'm actually setting it down and pressing, making little small polka dots of white. You want to scatter those all around. That's going to be your snow later. So make sure you're really giving it a good push when you do it. So when you're all finished with that, our final part will be to get ready to paint. Now the name of her painting is called Cardinal. And you can see that she hid a little cardinal bird in her painting. If you would like to add a cardinal bird to your painting, you can do that. You can use a crayon or an oil pastel. Sometimes the crayon is a little bit more pointed. I have pretty fat oil pastels, so I found that a red crayon works a little bit easier for drawing the cardinal. And if you want to do that, let me show you how I drew the cardinal. I just followed along with what I see. First thing I notice is the cardinal has a round belly, so I'm just going to draw the letter U, the red crayon. And then I'm going to draw a straight line right above the U. You see it's kind of on an angle. I'm going to fill in the tummy and lengthen that tail a little bit. Now for the head, I'm just going to make a small circle right here. And the bird has a pointed head. And I'm going to just extend that line for the beak. And there's my little cardinal bird. When you're all finished making your cardinal bird, if you decided to add one, we're going to get ready to paint now. So I am left-handed, so all of my tools are going to be on my left-hand side. If you are right-handed, you're going to be putting your paint set on the right-hand side. So let me get my area set up. I'm going to put my napkin right up here, right underneath my painting, right next to my paint set. And the first thing we're going to be doing is deciding what color you want to start painting. So you can make your houses a different color than you used your oil pastel. For instance, I used light blue on my house. It doesn't mean I have to paint my house light blue. I might want to paint it green. So I could change the color. And remember, when we're working with watercolor, we never paint with the paint. We paint with the water floating on top. So I'm going to add a little water to whatever color you want to work with. And you're just going to paint right over your oil pastel. So you'll notice as long as you keep that water mixed in with that paint, your paint is going to resist the oil pastel. So I don't need a lot of paint. I can just pull it all along my painting, and it's just going to fill in the spaces where I left white paper. Now, if you did not leave any paper and you colored it very solid with your oil pastel, then the paint is just going to kind of float on top of your picture. Now, as I'm working, I'm rinsing out my brush, checking my brush to make sure it's clean before I move on to the next color. And you're just going to go in and start painting your house and your roof and your doors and your windows. And when you're all finished painting everything, then we'll move on to doing the snow and the sky. But for this part, I just want you to have fun. Don't worry about it being perfect. Don't worry if your colors start to leak into one another. That might happen, and that's okay. If you still have extra color left over on your brush, like I do here, then you can go in and take it and paint it somewhere else. So I'm going to use it right over here on this roof. I still have leftover paint, scooping it up. I can find another spot to use it. I'm going to use it over here on my door. So go ahead and pause the video, finish painting your house, your roof, your chimneys, and then, oh, don't forget your doors and windows too, and then meet me back and we will work on painting our sky and our snow. Welcome back. I have everything colored in that I need to color for my house and my roof and my chimney. And now we're going to get ready to mix a color for our snow. So I know snow is white, but actually it has a little hint of blue in it. So let's look at Karla Gerard's original picture, and you'll see that there's a little light blue in the snow. So we want to make a really pale light blue. So I'm going to be using the lid of my paint set to make a small little puddle of light blue. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to clean my lid. My lid's pretty dirty from the last time I used it, so I'm going to clean it out. Wipe it with my napkin. There we go. So I'm going to add a little water. And then I'm going to add a tiny bit of blue to it. Rinse it around, add a little bit more water so it's very pale. And now I'm just going to take that light, pale blue, and I'm going to brush it all over where the snow is. Now, as I do this, you'll see that wherever my oil pastel was on my paper, that the water is resisting against that oil pastel. It's not showing. So if there's just paper, it sticks, but wherever that oil pastel is, it doesn't stick. Also, you'll notice sometimes you'll get these little pieces of crumbs that come off of your oil pastel. Don't worry about it. Don't try to pick them off. When your picture's all dry, you'll be able to kind of blow and those will just fall right off. All right, I have a nice light shade of blue all across my picture. It's very, very pale. It definitely isn't dark. And now I'm going to figure out what color to make my sky. Now, in Karla Gerard's picture, she made her sky a little dark. It's kind of like a gray day. And you could do this too by just using a little bit of water and black paint to make a gray sky. However, maybe you would like to make your sky a little brighter. I use blue and purple in my sky because those are the colors that I like. Maybe you want your sky to be a sunset sky. It's really going to be up to you. The way that we're going to do our sky is we're just going to paint with water first. And I'm only going to paint about a third, which is if you divided your picture into 3 sections, I'm just going to paint a third, meaning one part of the top of my painting. And the reason I'm only going to paint a little bit at a time is because if I paint the entire paper with water, it's going to dry. So I'm just going to do a little bit of water right up here, about one, if I broke my picture up into 3 sections. So the first section, just water. And then I'm going to go in with whatever color I want my sky to be. So I'm going to be using the water that's floating on top of my blue. And you'll see it spreads very nicely. Another thing you're going to notice that when I use that water that was floating on top of my blue is that wherever my oil pastel is, there's my snow and the smoke coming out of my chimney. You'll see that it resists the water paint. Now I'm going to add a little bit more water to the next section. Remember, we're doing 3 sections at a time. And the minute I add that water, I don't even have any paint on my brush. The paint is going to start to travel and follow that water. So I'm just very softly brushing some water on another section of my sky. And then I'm going to just take my paint and pull it across. I'm not even adding any more paint, but if it's getting a little too light for you, you can go back to your sky color, whatever color you decided. You can add another scoop and then spread it out. For my final section, I'm going to go right over here and I'm just going to take a little bit of water on my brush. And once again, I'm just going to kind of help pull it along until the last section of my sky is painted. As I mentioned before, if your color is getting too light and you need to add a little bit more color, just add a little bit more water to whatever color you're doing for your sky and tap that color in. Now you saw in my painting, I did a blue and a purple sky. And so what I did was once I finished coloring all of my sky with blue, then I went in and added a little bit of water to my purple. And I popped just a little bit of purple up in the top. Rinse out my brush and then just kind of twirl my brush across the top to let those colors kind of blend together. Well, I hope you had fun today working on our folk art painting. Our artist's name is Karla Gerard. She is a contemporary. That just means that she is still alive. Folk artist. Folk artist means she taught herself how to paint. I hope you had fun. I had fun painting with you, and I will see you for our next art lesson. Have a great day.